Of course, but that's not all. Once when a leader asked me that question, excuse me, I said, Eunie, why do we keep on? And I remember hearing myself say, you mean we have a choice? I mean, Eagle leaders share a calling to do all that we can do to make a difference for God, family, and country. We've learned how, when, and where to address pivotal issues to make our voices heard. If we know what needs to be done and how to do it, well, how can we remain silent? Okay, but what else? Besides children and grandchildren, and experience motivates us. As chairman of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in the 1970s, Senator Jesse Helms met with Alexander Solzhenitsyn shortly after he arrived in the United States, after years of confinement in Soviet slave labor camps, during which he converted from Marxism to Christianity. Solzhenitsyn said to Senator Helms, I only hope that Americans won't have to lose their freedom to realize that it was worth fighting for. Well, Eagle leaders understand the value of freedom and that freedom is not free. It has to be earned by each succeeding generation, as Ronald Reagan said. So we keep fighting. And when we see freedom in its many manifestations slipping away, we're more motivated than ever. When Solzhenitsyn spoke in 1978 at Harvard's commencement on A World Split Apart, he bemoaned two things: societal decadence and the lack of great statesmen. Now that was 40 years ago. He hit the nail on the head on both counts for today, didn't he? What we need in every elected position in this country is not politicians who look solely to the next election, but statesmen who will look to the next generation. Thankfully, we have a statesman here to address us later tonight. You've already applauded the prayer for him, so you can tell that we're grateful for you, Congressman Jim Jordan. Solzhenitsyn concluded at Harvard, no one on earth has any other way left but upward. That's how America began, looking upward. Our founders referenced their reliance on God 5 times in their Declaration of Independence. They declared those rights endowed to us by our Creator to be unalienable, the right to life and liberty and the pursuit of happiness. To secure these rights and the freedom that they enable, Eagle Forum volunteers are on the front lines in their communities, before school boards, state legislatures, and in the halls of Congress. On federal issues this past year, we sent specific alerts every week to inform and activate our grassroots on a myriad of issues. Many dealt with the sanctity of human life. We especially insisted that Congress stop pouring hundreds of millions of dollars into the Planned Parenthood abortion industry. We call for fiscal responsibility, for protection of our borders, and for American sovereignty. On education, when the administration called for the merger of the Department of Education with Labor, we immediately explained why this proposal would not downsize or demolish the Department of Education, according to President Trump's campaign promise. Instead, it would be a rerun of the Mark Tucker-Hillary Clinton plan, which would ultimately result in the European socialist model of control over students' life choices and an economy managed by the state for select corporations. As I can just hear Phyllis saying these words, we do not need a government-managed economy. It's thanks to America's free enterprise system, free market system, and citizens who take advantage of it that America offers more opportunity and social mobility than any other country. And we must not allow that system to be subverted. In a joint letter to the White House, we quoted C.S. Lewis, "If education is beaten by training, civilization dies." The lesson of history is that civilization is a rarity attained with difficulty and easily lost. Do you wonder why so many millennials bash America and advocate socialism? Well, just read public school textbooks. We had a project in Alabama, as Hank knows, doing that for years and still do. It was bad before Common Core, but it's gotten much worse. Common Core took away the stories of America in rich literature that explores the struggle between good and evil. It took away accurate history that conveys the good about our country and the sacrifices of so many for her very existence. Substitute those stories with trashy readings and class struggle-centered history, and you take away students' heritage and their hope and their highway for a future in freedom. The states still need to actually replace the national curriculum called Common Core with academically superior standards and methodology, which have been proven to equip every student to achieve his potential, and that can be done, and it must be done. But going forward, I'm very pleased to say that National Eagle Forum plans to produce regularly an Eagle Forum education report to enhance our effectiveness in this vital area. Also, going forward, God willing, and if our resources permit, we expect other outstanding policy experts to join with us as Eagle Forum Fellows to extend our voice and effectiveness. Two Constitution issues that I'd like to mention on which Eagle Forum continues to engage will be discussed in a breakout session tonight, and I hope you all will attend. First, the proposed Equal Rights Amendment. We used to say so-called. It's being revived. We buried it once, but today's feminists choose to ignore the court ruling 20 years ago that ERO was dead. It would bring to women no advantages, no opportunities that they don't already have, but it would bring problems. Federal, not state courts would decide the legality of any differentiation anywhere in the law between men and women on account of sex. This is a statement from constitutional scholar Senator Sam Erwin. He said, if this Equal Rights Amendment is adopted, it will virtually reduce the states of this nation to meaningless zeros on the nation's map. That's the last thing we need. You may have seen the tweet from an ERA proponent recently that referenced ERA as gender equality. What exactly does that mean? We wouldn't know if it were passed until the courts told us, and I don't think we'd want to find out. The second issue is a well-funded push. Well, I should have said it's up to Eagle Forum to defeat ERA again, and we're going to do it. It's going to be a challenge, but you all are up to it, so we're going to do it. The second issue is a well-funded push for a new constitutional convention. Thanks largely to Constitution Chairman Janine Hanson's leadership, not one state this past year, 2018, passed a call for a con-con, and it was, yes. It was rejected in 18 states. When Phyllis Schlafly began speaking against a con-con, some of y'all will remember this, I do, in the 1970s, the question was then whether a constitution could be limited to the one subject of a balanced budget amendment. Now, advocates openly advocate for countless amendments. The refrain of what they call an Article 5 convention being America's last best hope rings hollow because the proponents of these conventions, this convention, are expecting the same people who are breaking our current Constitution to abide by whatever potentially unrecognizable document their convention adopted. Now really, how logical is that? It's hard to imagine anything more foolhardy than a rewrite of our Constitution at any time, but especially in this volatile political climate when civil discourse seems a thing of the past. As heritage scholar John York wrote on September 17th of this year, Americans should be thankful not only for the rare genius that assembled in Philadelphia in 1787 to draft the Constitution, but for the unique circumstances under which they met. Not all moments in time are ripe for the founding of a nation, nor is every citizenry equally prepared to receive new modes and orders. The founders' time and generation presented just such an opportunity. Our time would not. So we need you to go to the breakout session to learn the latest strategy of the ERA. I'm sorry, almost same difference. The Article 5 advocates, and we will want you all to understand in each of the states that it's going to be really important for you to advocate a rescinding of all the previous calls for a convention, because what they're planning now apparently is to consider all previous calls, no matter what they were. You used to say they had to be identical. Now the plan is just consider them in the aggregate. So that will mean that they'll have the closer to the requisite number of states to expect the convention to be called. Going forward, Eagle Forum will extend the mission of RNC Life. Eagle Forum pro-life chairman Mary Summers has done a fabulous job since 1992 at every Republican Party convention of equipping pro-family delegates to make the Republican Party pro-life again. You heard Phyllis's comments, her vision, Mary, and many, many others, Gail, many others have implemented. We're committing to keeping that plank pro-life, but we plan to extend the protection of life in the womb to those innocents, children in particular, who are suffering modern-day slavery as a result of human trafficking for sex or other forms of servitude. We would call the new effort RNC Life and Liberty. We don't know how many children are enslaved in the United States, but we must raise awareness and tighten laws and rescue those who are perishing. This would be the plank that we would propose to be put into the Republican Party convention, because we believe in in the fundamental right of every individual to pursue life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. We demand the abolition of all forms of human slavery, especially the recruitment and trafficking of children for illicit purposes. We believe that those who engage in these abhorrent practices should be identified and held accountable to the fullest extent of the law. The breakout session on this subject will be tomorrow night, led by Gail Ruzicka and Tracy Bradford. When my husband served in Congress in 1981, I remember attending with him a small dinner to hear theologian Francis Schaeffer. That intellectual giant had written to fellow Christians living in a country that he saw then losing its way. We'd read his book, How Should We Then Live, and seen the subsequent film series, which was chronicling the rise and decline of Western thought and culture. He appealed to Christians to step out of their pews into American culture, government, law, academia, art, music, films, whatever, certainly the political sphere, to develop whatever talent God had given them and live their faith fully in their chosen arena. He admonished Christians, in other words, to be salt as well as light. And that night, Dr. Schaeffer closed his comments with Revelation 3:20, which reads, I have not yet found your deeds complete in the sight of my God. Many responded then, and many have since. We need more. Those we're honoring here tonight have reached into the culture, and only the good Lord knows their impact. He knows the end from the beginning, but I start to say their impact remains to be seen. The Greens, a museum of the Bible on Capitol Hill. I mean, you may be so in some other time, but not now. But it's done. Praise God, and thanks to y'all and your obedience to Him. And the Erwins, a series of highly acclaimed, faith-based films. Wow. Can you hear Dr. Schaefer and the heavenly host cheering for both of these teams? Let me start with talking a little bit about Andy and his family and their family legacy. Senator Hank Erwin, who gave pledge, is the father, obviously, of the Erwin brothers. As a TV host, Hank interviewed Phyllis in 2008. I have a copy of that DVD, and there's some for y'all to pick up if you'd like one. It's an hour long, and it's vintage Phyllis, covering, like she did, all kinds of issues. At that point, it was the supremacist, her book, the North American Union, and that religious liberty. And those are all issues that are still vital and viable today. Phyllis awarded Hank the first Eagle Media Award. The Erwin brothers' movie, Woodlawn, is the story of how their father's testimony not only eased racial tensions on one high school football team, but had eternal repercussions throughout the city of Birmingham. A movie was also made about Hank's father, Air Force Sergeant Henry Red Erwin, who earned the Congressional Medal of Honor. On a mission over Japan during World War II, a phosphorus bomb ignited inside the plane, spewed so much smoke that the crew of Red Erwin's bomber was unable to see. The plane was about to crash. Sergeant Erwin credited God with enabling him to find the bomb, carry it to a window, and throw it out in time to save the plane. And he credited God with his miraculous recovery after almost 3 years. You can watch that movie online. Hank Erwin and his wife Sheila homeschooled their 2 boys. I can remember, Hank, when you proudly told me that you had bought the best movie camera you could find for them, and that was really proven to be a pretty good investment, I would say. John and Andrew Erwin are a directing team who focus on developing and producing unique stories of redemption, faith, and triumph of the human spirit. As teenagers in their hometown of Birmingham, they began working as camera operators for ESPN. Local games at the University of Alabama became a full-time career. The brothers eventually worked on everything from college football to the NBA, NFL, and X Games. In 2002, the team began their own video production company doing commercials, documentaries, and music videos. They found their greatest success in the world of music, directing videos and producing concerts and television programs for platinum artists like Amy Grant and Michael W. Smith. John and Andy won Music Video of the Year at the GMA Dove Awards 3 years consecutively and 11 nominations. They have produced and directed several feature-length documentaries, including the multi-award-winning 9/11 story, The Cross and the Towers, and the short film series, God Provides. In 2010, the brothers shifted focus full-time to feature films. Their first feature, October Baby, y'all saw that, the story of an abortion survivor, debuted theatrically in the top 10. Then came Mom's Night Out and Woodlawn. The fourth feature film, I Can Only Imagine, is based on Mercy Me's #1 hit song of the same name. Now, I have friends who've seen this last movie 2 or 3 times. I've only seen it once, but I was, along with the rest of the theater, really crying at the end out of joy. which that's what I do when I'm especially happy. I've overcome, I have to cry. And it certainly was the case with that wonderful, wonderful message in that movie. So Andy, Erwin, Eagle Forum is immensely grateful for your inspired work, and we're honored that you're here with your son Isaac, and the other two children are upstairs with their mom, Mandy, and Sheila, Andy's mom, is here. We appreciate all of you. Please come forward and receive the Eagle Award.
Quite an honor. Like Eunie said, I remember being my son's age and watching my dad get this award. And that was a day that was pivotal for me because I understood the importance of using your gift for the kingdom. And I was very proud of my dad that day. And so it's exciting to be here with my son, Isaac, to be a part of this tonight and kind of carry it forward and see what God does next. My dad, of course, was in politics the majority of my life, and I loved what he did, but I always swore that I would never be involved in politics. And then one day, about a year and a half ago, I turned around and realized all I do is politics. But we love Eagle Forum. John, as regretfully, couldn't be here tonight, but we love your history. We love the strong, especially the strong women that have led this with Phyllis and Eunie, and just the impact that it's had over the years. Also, really a privilege to be here with the Greens. Had it not been for the Greens, there would have been no I Can Only Imagine. They even, to the point that they donated their offices at Hobby Lobby for us to headquarter out of while we filmed the movie. And so, and that was while they had this little thing on the side. They were doing this Bible museum, so they were kind of busy. But they took care of us little guys to make sure that we could do our movies. We're grateful for the friendship. But when we did October Baby, we didn't know, we had really wrestled with what God would have John and myself do. And I was at a Bible conference one day, and they had a thing where they wanted people to come forward that wanted to be missionaries, and I went forward. I called my dad on the phone that night, and I said, Dad, I've decided I'm going to go translate Bibles overseas. And so my dad, knowing me really well, laughed out loud, and he said, is that really what you want to do? And I said, absolutely not. I said, I just feel like that's what you have to do to be, to be able to serve the Lord. And he said, Andy, what's in your hand? And I said, well, I got a video camera, but I don't know how God could ever use that. And he said, very similar to what Francis Schaeffer said to those young people. He said, Andy, give God what's in your hand, let him figure out how to use it. And so that night I said, Lord, I got a video camera. I don't know what you could do with this, but if you could ever use it, it's yours. And so going forward, God just began to put that passion in our heart a little bit. He wouldn't let us escape it. And when God has a call in your life, it's not about you going out and making it happen. You're not going to be able to miss it. And so John and I decided to do October Baby. It was a story that captured our heart. And it came out. We didn't expect it to be as controversial as it was. It was just a pro-life story of really about forgiveness, love, and hope. Which is the DNA of all of our films. But it became very controversial. It was one of the few films to ever make the front page of the New York Times. And an actor, a prominent actor you guys would know, reached out to me, who's conservative, and asked if we wanted to have dinner. And so I went to go meet him, and he actually showed up. And I was kind of this kid from Alabama with my jaw on the ground. And I said, well, man, I feel like we may have just gotten blacklisted because of our first story. And he said, Andy, there's thousands of us out here that would work with you in a heartbeat. And so God just continued to not let us quit. And then it came to, I Can Only Imagine, and we had done Moms It Out in Woodlawn, and then when we got to Imagine, it was a story that was universally relatable because it was a father-son story. And when we knew we had a movie, we asked Bart, we said, if we were to ask you how you know there's a God, what would you say? And he said, I would say because of the change I saw in my father. He said he went from being a monster to my best friend, and if the gospel can change that guy, the gospel can change anybody. And when he said that, we said, that's a story that'll preach. Because I think what we desperately want is we want to recapture the hearts of a generation that is disillusioned with the gospel and Christianity, because all they've seen is anger, and they really want an invitation. And so we told a story that was simply a story that redemption, nobody is beyond redemption, nobody is beyond forgiveness. Any relationship can be restored. And to see God do what he did, and thank God for the audience that showed up. When opening weekend came around, we were told that it was going to do $2 to $4 million opening weekend, and for what we had spent on it, I would be asking the Greens for a job right now if that had done that. But God just and so everybody was kind of doubting it, and then opening weekend, the audience showed up en masse and let their voice be heard, and it did 17.1 million opening weekend. Went on to do 83 million. So. And then what the amazing thing that happened is, because of the fear of missing out kicks in for a generation that desperately doesn't want to miss out. The people we call the ambivalent skeptic, they showed up and said, hey, what is this thing about? And people that would have never gone to see a faith film otherwise showed up in theaters. And then the results that came in were just amazing to see God at work. And it wasn't about us. We just told a story. But to see God's Spirit move in those theaters. One of them was a lady went to go see the film with her son. It was her second time seeing it, I believe. And she went to go see it, and it was a full theater. And after it was over, she heard tears and people crying. There was a lady sitting right next to her, and she said, the lady turns to this lady and her son and says, are you a Christian? And she said, yes, I am. Are you? And the lady said, no, I'm not, but I need that Bart Miller's dad kind of change in my life. How do I get that? And they knelt down in the theater right there. And to see that happen time and time again was just amazing, to see the potential that I think God can continue to reach a generation. And so the doors have been blown wide open, and God willing, there's us and others that are championing the idea of redemptive content in the local theater being the greatest mission field that we could have ever imagined. So God bless you guys. Thank you guys for the honor. We're humbled to be in a room with people that we really respect, and God bless you guys. Thank you.
How many people here know about PureFlix instead of Netflix?
Yeah.
So if you've not heard of PureFlix, you can get it for free for a month, and I just linked the video on there.
Well, thank you so much. God bless you. Thank you, guys. Yeah.
What's your next film?
Well, my current project that is spending time with my family and sleeping a lot. But I can't go into complete detail on it, but Lionsgate has been an amazing partner. They came along and really took a risk on Imagine when a lot of other studios had passed. They really invested heavily in making sure it was successful. And so after it did what it did, they came back to us and they said, we want a long-term relationship. And so we spent the whole summer negotiating it, and they've given us, we've created a studio with them called Kingdom Studios, and we're going to be able to do all the faith content generated through Lionsgate, and we're trying to work towards where we can do at least 1 to 2 theatrical films a year. We've got 8 in development right now. We're going to announce the slate soon, and it's just the stories we're going to get to tell. I wish there was more time in the day to be able to do it. So the announcement should come after the first of the year, and it's going to be exciting. And we feel like it's stewardship. It's not about us, but God, what do you want to do with the platform that you give us and others to further the kingdom? And that's what we called it, what we did. So God bless you guys. Thank you so much.
Isn't that exciting? We need some good news, and that is the best. Now it's my pleasure to talk about our Green ladies. Jackie Green is co-founder of the Museum of the Bible, which we're all excited about visiting tomorrow. From what I hear, our few hours will only whet our appetites to return the next day, which you can do on the same pass. Phyllis Schlafly awarded Jackie the 2013 Full-Time Homemaker of the Year Award in 2013, as I said, Many of us had the pleasure of greeting the Green family then, which was delightful, and we met Jackie's husband, Steve, who spoke at that time. And he really chronicled their family legacy, which was a blessing to hear. Jackie is the co-author with Steve of a book entitled This Dangerous Book, How the Bible Has Shaped Our World and Why It Still Matters Today. That was 2017. Lauren Green McAfee is the oldest of their 6 children. She's the brand ambassador for the Bible Museum and a doctoral student at Southern Seminary working towards a degree in ethics. Together, mother and daughter have written this book. Y'all are gonna have another treat. You're gonna get a copy of this as you leave. Each of the ladies in the audience gets a copy as you leave. It's entitled Only One Life, How a Woman's Every Day Shapes an Eternal Legacy. It's primarily a collection of vignettes of 36 women as famous as Harriet Tubman or Elizabeth Elliot, who spoke at Eagle Council one year. I don't remember when. But it was a really treat. Or as little known as a nameless woman at an ancient well who changed others' lives through their actions, like being mothers, teachers, activists, whatever the Lord called them to do. They provide a compelling case for attention and action to combat modern-day slavery, for example, in one of the chapters. I'm delighted to tell you that we do have this book copy. And I've read almost all of it. You really have a treat in store. A company, we had hoped that Danielle, your daughter, would be here, but she's not with you, but tell her we missed her. And we are very, very happy. I personally am very happy and honored to present Jackie Green and Lauren McAfee with the Eagle Award. So if y'all come forward.
Well, what an honor it is for Lauren and I to be here. She is one of my 6 kids, so she's representing our family. Come on up here with me. I like to be with somebody. So, but we're delighted. Thank you, Eunie, and to the leadership of Eagle Forum. We appreciate all that you all are doing, and thank you for the great honor with the award, and thank you for all that you're doing for kingdom purposes. I wanted to just tell you a little bit about some of the thoughts that Lauren and I have had about legacy, because we've been talking about it a lot lately since we co-authored a book that came out in June. And I'm so glad that you got them for the women in the crowd. Thank you for doing that. I hope you enjoy reading it and that it's encouraging to you as you shape your own legacy story. There are some very important women in our lives that we accept this award for, and they lived long before us, many of them, but we stand on their shoulders and we've learned at their knees. And so we accept this in honor of them. Legacy, it can be a grand and daunting word at times. Have you ever thought what your legacy will be? I think about what my legacy is going to be. It's about so much more than myself. We define legacy as the story of your life that lives on after you leave this earth. We all write this story every day by the values that we embrace and that we live out with the small choices that we make all the time. Your legacy can be positive or it can be destructive, and the outcome is up to us. When viewed through a lens of these small everyday actions and how they add up, we are creating a story that's the most important thing that we could ever undertake. I'm going to tell you a short story of one of the women in my past, in my history, and that was my great-grandmother, Fanny. Frances Olivia was born in 1881 in Arkansas, and at 2 years old, her mother passed away in childbirth. At that time, she was abandoned by her father and left with an aunt that raised her, but did dote on her and was very loving. Unfortunately, 3 years later, she was abandoned again when her aunt passed away. But she was taken to Missouri to live with another aunt and uncle who were raising 4 young sons. And she had a very difficult life at that time. When she was 17, she met the love of her life, Frank, and wanted to get married, but her uncle would not condone the union. So when she turned 18, she put all of her belongings in a pillowcase and threw them out the window and left to meet a train to Kansas across the state line with Frank, and they got married. They came back to Missouri, and they had 14 children together. So, yeah, that's a lot. 14, but 6 of them died in infancy, which was not uncommon at that time. One of them died as a 15-year-old, one of their daughters. But the very youngest of those children was my grandmother, Delia, my granny, who passed away 4 years ago at the age of 92. And at 90 was still going to pick up her 95-year-old sister for Sunday school every morning, or every Sunday morning. So, but the story about Fanny, I want to come back to, she had a very difficult life. Things didn't go well for her, but when she had teenage children and a husband that was often ill, and it was told that he was a difficult man, raising the children and trying to take care of the home was a big job for her, and she wasn't living a life of faith. But 2 of her teenagers invited her to attend a tent revival, and she had the boldness to go. So they loaded up in their wagon that was a horse-drawn wagon. This is a long time ago. And they went to the tent revival, and she changed her life. She made a choice that has changed the trajectory of my life, of my children's lives, and many of our family members, many, many more to come. So with that legacy, Fanny never got to see the outcome of her choice that night, but her 8 children did follow the Lord with their whole lives. And we have now many, we can't even count the number of people in our family that have lived out a life of faith for Christ. And so this is just a short story that I wanted to share with you as an example that we do not often know the impact that we leave in the lives of others. We may never know, but to encourage you to be faithful as you shape your legacy story. Alongside Lauren and I, we're trying our best to do that as well. And remember, your legacy is your story that will outlive you. Thank you.
I just wanted to take a little bit of time as well just to say thank you so much for everyone at Eagle Forum for your leadership and the great commitment that the leadership as well as everyone involved has towards standing for these important values that we have. Mom and I, as she mentioned, we're so grateful to be here, and Mom shared a story of my great-great-grandmother and kind of standing on the legacy of her shoulders for the legacy that we've received today. But I also intentionally went second because I knew that would give me the chance to also highlight my mom and honor her. She has been the woman that has impacted me the most in my life, and she has lived out a legacy every day in a way that I've gotten to see her with great tenacity and intentionality every day. She homeschooled me and many of my siblings growing up, and we would wake up and spend the day with Mom teaching us all of our lessons, and she had a great commitment to the values that she was gaining from the Bible, and she valued the scripture, and she would teach us that. And that's a part of the legacy that's living on in me and my 4 sisters that are younger than me. And I wish that my 4 sisters could be here as well, because they're every much a bit as part of that legacy as I get to be here. And my mom also today getting to be a part of founding Museum of the Bible, the museum that is here in Washington, D.C., which I'm so excited you guys get to go see tomorrow. What a great opportunity to get to be a part of God's plans and his purpose in creating a museum that is here in Washington, D.C., celebrating the most important book in the world, in history, and in my own life, and in our families' lives. So it was a lot of fun to get to work with my mom because of the great legacy that she has invested in me. I love getting to work alongside her on the book that we wrote, Only One Life, which I'm so excited that everyone here will get a copy. And in that, we shared 36 mini biographies of women from the Bible, women from history, and women today that are living out a legacy and are shaping an eternal impact because of their lives. We explore stories of women like Mary, the mother of Jesus, and show that she had a great legacy of faith to trust the angel whenever he came to her and said that she was going to be the mother of Jesus. She had one question, and that was, how is this possible? And then from then, she went forward and had faith and was a woman that cared for Jesus, and what an incredible legacy. And we highlight women like Fanny Crosby, as well as Rosa Parks, women who had great difficulties in life, but rose because of the convictions that they had and the faith legacy that they had, and stood for what was right. And then modern day women like Christine Kane, who started A21, which is a woman, she and her husband started A21, and that's an organization that's protecting individuals that find themselves being trafficked and rescuing them. And what a legacy of rescue. So there are women all throughout history and today that are shaping incredible legacies, and we love that the opportunity for shaping our own legacy is open to all of us. Legacy is not something that is only for those that are well known and have started an organization, but legacy is something that each of us has the opportunity to shape in our own lives with the individuals that we come in contact with every day. And that's kind of the theme of the book that we wrote. So much like Mom mentioned with Fanny, Fanny never got to see the legacy that she was shaping, and now on 5-6 generations down the line is still impacting our family, and she never would have known that. But our legacy is made up of the small moments that we have every day. It's the little choices that we make with integrity, conviction, because of our faith and obedience to God, that shapes a significant, powerful legacy. And we can impact eternity by investing in those things that are eternal. And my grandfather, David Green, is always talking to our family and talking about the things of legacy, and he always says, 2 things are eternal, that is God's word and the human soul. So as we invest in those things, we're not only shaping a powerful legacy, we're shaping an eternal legacy, and that's available for each of us to invest in as we go about our days, with the people we come in contact with, and as we live out our lives with true conviction. And so whether you're a business person, you're in politics, you're a stay-at-home mom, we all have these opportunities to shape a legacy. It's open to all of us. And one of the things that gives me the greatest strength in looking at my own life and shaping my own legacy, is knowing that as we go about shaping our legacy, we can be motivated by the ultimate legacy that's not defined by what we do, but our legacy that has ultimately been defined by what Christ has already done for us. So in Christ, we have a legacy that is received. We received that from him. It's not something we have to achieve. And that is the greatest gift for our own legacy. And I pray that we go out and offer that to others as well. So again, thank you for what you do here at Eagle Forum. Mom and I are so humbled and honored. We're grateful to be standing alongside our friends, the Erwins, and so grateful for their legacy of taking significant stories and sharing that on an incredible platform and with excellence. So keep up the good work, guys. We love you guys. Grateful for everyone. Thank you.
What a treat we've already had. What a wonderful, and we are in for another. Congressman Jim Jordan, he really needs no introduction, but I'm going to do a little one. He's from Ohio. He has a bachelor's degree in economics, a master's in education, a law degree. He was a two-time NCAA wrestling champion. I'm sorry that Polly couldn't be here with you, but we'll hope that she'll join us another time. I have to tell the most important thing. He has 4 children and 2 grandchildren. And in this Congress, He has served as chairman of the House Republican Study Committee, and in the 114th Congress, he helped found the House Freedom Caucus and served as its first chairman. Welcome. I'll move all my junk.
Oh, that's fine. I can work around.
You can get around.
Yeah, I'm sure. Thank you. God bless you. Thank you. Good to be with you all. You don't have to clap twice. Eunie, thank you. Thank all of you and Eagle Forum and Ann and the legacy of Phyllis. As I was telling Ann earlier, when I first got interested in politics, it was between, we have four, as Eunie said, Rachel, Benjamin, Jesse, and Isaac, and it was between when Benjamin was born and when Jesse came along, as I was starting to get interested in politics, and I read the Phyllis's newsletter every time it came out to start to understand some of the issues and principles that I thought we were going to need when I decided to run for office. So thank you all for what you do, and congratulations. Now, did I get this right? Is Isaac yours, or is that Isaac yours? We got an Isaac too. That's our youngest. You're Isaac, yeah. Laughter, good name. Congratulations to you. And I was hoping someone was going to sing. I can only imagine. I love that song. Don't y'all love that song? Plus, I mean, I have my wife. Eunie mentioned my wife. She was always the lead in the play. She can sing. She can play the piano. I can't do any of that. I have zero artistic talent. In fact, I have the unique distinction of being this is true, the only kid in the history of Graham South Elementary School who was not allowed to be in the choir. True story. I'm in 5th grade, and I try out for the choir for the Christmas musical because I want to get out of class with my buddies. And Mrs. Mason, wonderful lady, she put the stuff in front of you, and I attempted to sing it. And when I got done, she looked at me and she goes, "Jordan, you are so bad. There is no way this is back before, like, we were all worried about everyone's self-esteem and politically correct. They just, let you have it." But she was kind. She let me run the spotlight, so at least I got out of class and got to, do that. So, but Andy, congratulations. That's wonderful what you're doing. We appreciate that. And Andy said, nobody is beyond redemption and forgiveness. And thank God for that, right? That is the gospel message. I mean, that's grace in and right there. So we, Jackie and Lauren, congratulations. Lauren, if you're interested in running for office, let us know. We need more ladies in the Freedom Caucus. We will gladly help. Come see Mark Meadows and I if you're interested down the line. But we appreciate what you do. And I should tell you all, the best tour guide or docent at the Bible Museum is this nice lady, Polly Jordan, who I've been married to for 33 years. She took my mom and dad, or she'd be here tonight, but she drove my mom and dad back home yesterday. We're in town because they had not been to the Bible Museum. And they spent the whole day there Wednesday. And mom got a little sick you guys got to get to do it. When you do the flyover, it's awesome. But Mom loved it, even though she said she got a little lightheaded for a second, but she loved that. And then do the New Testament tour, do the Old Testament, do everything. Spend the entire day there. It is wonderful, and we appreciate your family's ministry and what you are doing. Thank you again for what you do. I tell this to every group I get a chance to speak to. When you get in the game to make a difference for the values and principles that made America the greatest nation in history, you get attacked. It's just the nature of particularly today. I mean, look. We all know the obvious example is what Brett Kavanaugh and his family are going through. This is unbelievable. That's just going to. I tell my buddies and the colleagues in the Freedom Caucus, if the press isn't saying something bad about you, you're not doing anything any good, right? That's just the way it works. I mean, just so when I learned this a long time ago. Good things in life typically don't just happen. If you want to accomplish something of meaning, significance, and lasting value, it takes work. It takes sacrifice. It takes effort. And most importantly, it takes a willingness to assume the risk associated with trying to accomplish something of meaning and significance. Because there's always a chance you fail, and there's always going to be the naysayers and the doubters that tell you not to do it. All kinds of examples in the scriptures where people are told you can't do it, and yet they did. So I appreciate you taking the risk and getting in the game. It's, Teddy Roosevelt said it's not on the sidelines, it's in the arena. So thank you for being there. And when you're there, like I said, the press, I love the line. I say this all the time because Cal Thomas has a way of capturing important concepts. And he talked about the way normal people see things and the way the elite national media, the New York Times and the Washington Post, the way they view things. And he had a great line. He says, "I get up every morning, I read my Bible and the New York Times so I can see what each side's up to." So there's a lot of truth to that. So thank you for doing that. and understand that willingness to step off the sidelines and get in the game and fight for the things that have lasting value has been a part of this nation's heritage since the beginning. We, one of our family's favorite movies is the musical 1776. So I don't know how many of you have seen it. It's got some language, but it's a great show. We made our kids watch it even when they were young. The boys liked it because of the language, I think sometimes. Boys are. But there's great values. They love the movie. We've watched it so many times we can't even count. But it's the story of those men in Pennsylvania, in Philadelphia, 1776, writing the document that declared to the world why it was actually appropriate to commit treason, right? They outline why this time it's okay to commit treason. And here are the reasons. We're going to spell it out for the entire world to see why we're taking this action. And of course, you follow this debate in that hot summer of 1776. And Adams, he's the guy pushing. He wants to get the thing signed and get it voted on and let's go. And it is just driving him crazy that they take so long. But the scene that captures all this is near the end. Jefferson has written the Declaration. They're now doing what Congresses do. They're marking it up, right? They're changing, amending, doing what, take all day. They're marking it up, what Congresses do. And so, again, they're in the debate, and one member stands up and he says, we need to change this paragraph. Because when King George sees this, it's just a little too rough. We need to tone this down. We need to change. And Adams rolls his eyes, and pretty soon another member stands up and he says, yeah, in this section, this is, when Parliament sees this, this is too strong as well. We're going to have to change this. And Adams rolls his eyes again. Third member stands up and says, look, this section is going to have to go altogether because this could jeopardize our deep sea fishing rights off the coast of New England. And Adams can't take it any longer. And he stands up and says, it's a revolution, dang it. We're going to have to offend somebody, right? So, and the point is, we don't want to offend anyone. We just want to stand for the truth. We want to stand for those values that make this country the greatest nation ever. Through the sport of wrestling, wrestling's been kind to me. When I was Isaac, how old are you, Isaac? 10. When I was 10, I was getting ready to say 10. You looked about this. When I was 10, I had life figured out like most 10-year-olds. I knew what I was going to do, right? I was going to play middle linebacker for the Pittsburgh Steelers. I knew it was. I grew up in the 70s. And the Steelers were winning everything, so I loved the Steelers. And Terry Bradshaw, Franco Harris, Lynn Swann, I can name them. Mean Joe Green, I can name them all. But my favorite guy was Jack Lambert, Kent State. Some of you guys remember, played middle linebacker for this. I knew I was going to do that, but you can all see the good Lord had other designs. I'm 5'7.5" on a good day, so I had to wrestle. But wrestling's been great to our family. My brother's done. I mean, it's been all our boys, and I got a bunch of nephews. They all wrestle in college. It's been great. It's a great sport, I think, for teaching young men the things they need to know. But I have the opportunity to wrestle. I wrestled in Cuba, been to Cuba a couple times, been to the Soviet Union. And I tell people, you go to places like that, you thank the good Lord you live here. I tell folks, I was in Moscow in February. Moscow in February, it's like 400 below zero. I mean, and the food was terrible. You really think, and then you go to Cuba, and again, this is not an indictment on the people. People are people. We're all ordinary folk in need of God's grace. People are people. It's the system. It's when liberty is restricted. Cuba, I was there in 1988, 1990. They were still driving 59 Chevys. My guess is today in 2018, they're still driving 59 Chevys before Castro took over. I mean, Cuba was a warm Soviet Union. That's what it was. And again, it's not the people, but this is what happens when freedom is attacked and basic principles are attacked. And there are really just three basic concepts that we have to defend all the time. And they were most succinctly stated. I had a chance to meet this guy because I've been talking about you remember the story of Scott O'Grady? The guy shot down over Bosnia. Remember this guy? Actually made a movie. Owen Wilson starred in the movie and all that. You remember? And I'd been telling this Scott O'Grady story, and I gave a speech, and somehow he saw it, and he called me. He called the office and said he wanted. I was like, yeah, I'll meet Scott O'Grady. This guy's a hero, right? He got the congressional medal from President Clinton and all when this happened. But he was shot down over Bosnia. He had to survive several days in the wild. Read his book if you haven't read his book. I just reread it. Very good. Had to survive several days. Ultimately rescued, brought to safety. When he's brought to safety, he stood at a podium like this because all the press wanted to talk to this guy. I mean, he'd just been through this amazing experience. And Scott O'Grady summed up what this country's about. Summed it all up, what life is about. He stood at a podium like this, bunch of microphones here, and he basically said three things. He said, first of all, I want to thank God because it's a miracle that I'm standing here today. He said, second, he said, now I'm paraphrasing here, but he said something to this effect. He said, I want to thank my family because it was while I was out there trying to make it, I knew they were thinking and praying for me. Knowing they were doing that helped motivate me to do what I had to do to make it. He said, I really want to thank my family. And then third, he said, I want to thank the guys who came and rescued me. I mean, they're the heroes. They're the true heroes. I want to thank my fellow servicemen who risked their lives to come save me. And I thought, this guy's figured it out. When he referenced God, he was getting at this idea of faith and how central the faith has played in the American experience from day one. And the idea that we now have people who want to drive faith completely out of the public square is scary to us. That's why what the Greens are doing with the Bible is so important. And we all know faith is important on a personal level, right? Relationship with the God of the universe through the work his son did when he came, bled, died, rose again is the most important thing. But it's also important on the aggregate, in the corporate sense, for the health of a country. And we need to keep fighting for that. And then when he referenced his family, look, this is you all know this, Phyllis knew that, this organization knows this. The first institution the good Lord put together wasn't the church, wasn't the state, it was moms and dads and kids. And the strength of that institution, I think, ultimately determines the strength of our culture and our country. And you just think about people impacted your life. For most people, it's their mom and dad. I mean, I think about my dad. My dad was a union worker at General Motors in Dayton, Ohio. My mom cleaned houses, put us all through college, made so many sacrifices for us. And Eunie mentioned some of the things that I did in wrestling, and I talked a little bit about. But I used to work at my brother's camp. My brother coaches at our high school, has had a phenomenal record. He has a successful wrestling camp. He gets about 1,500 kids over a 10-week period every summer. And I used to work for him before I got in Congress in the summertime at his camp. And in the course of camp, there'd always be some kid who'd walk up to you and they'd say, Coach, what was the biggest win in your career? And like I said, wrestling's been great. We've wrestled all over the country and been around the world in different places. But for me, the biggest win in my wrestling career came when I was a 15-year-old freshman in high school and was able to win the state tournament. And I tell people I won mostly because of my dad. When I stop and think about it, I won mostly because I was ignorant. I didn't know that freshmen weren't supposed to win the state tournament. I didn't know that kids from Southwest Ohio weren't supposed to beat those guys from Cleveland and Akron and Canton where wrestling was big. I didn't know that some small-town country boy from Graham High School wasn't supposed to be a state champion. All I knew is what my dad told me. And he said, if you work hard and you set goals, good things can happen. And I was dumb enough to believe him. I mean, really, it's just I was. And I said, all right, well, I'll do it. But that dynamic plays out every generation in every single family when it's done right. Moms and dads making sacrifices, helping their kids so that they can have life a little better than they did. They, in turn, have a family do the same thing for their kids, and we get this amazing thing we call America because of that core institution. And that's why this organization, in fighting to preserve that fundamental institution, the first thing God put together, is so darn important. And then last, and I'll spend a few minutes on this because I really think this is important. When Scott O'Grady referenced his fellow servicemen coming to save him, I think he was getting at the word we most associate with America, and that's the word freedom. I mean, stop and think about it. The United States military has always stood for freedom, and that's the exception. Throughout most of history, militaries have stood for tyranny and oppression, but not the United States Armed Forces. They have always stood for freedom and liberty, and frankly, not just for Americans, but for countless number of people around this planet. And freedom, right now, so Scott O'Grady, faith, family, freedom, he got it right, but right now, freedom is under assault from the left in this nation. I've never, and I'll get a little political here, but I have never seen the hard left take the extreme positions they are now taking, and those positions being embraced by the Democrat Party. You don't believe me? Think about these three statements. They applaud Kaepernick when he disrespects the flag. They embrace Cuomo when he says America was never that great, and they cheer on Maxine Waters when she says, go harass people who support our president. They embrace all that. That is scary. Polly and I got the treatment for the first time we've ever went to the theater here in town. We never, we're country folk from Western Ohio. We never been to the theater, so this is 2.5 months ago. It's 2 days after Maxine Waters gave her first big rant about go harass people in the Trump who support President Trump. We're at the theater. We're inside. We're going up this ramp. Big crowd of people. We're all dressed, all this stuff. We're walking up. I got our tickets out, and I'm literally, because we've never been there before, I'm just looking for the lady in the red jacket, right? I'm looking for the usher. Tell us what door to go in. And as we're standing there, all of a sudden I hear behind us this lady's voice, and she says, Jim Jordan. And just the way she said it, I thought, oh no, we're gonna get the treatment. And I did I was kind of afraid to turn. I just sort of did a quick little glance, and because there's someone always filming or something. I didn't want to I don't want to be on camera with someone yelling at me like, well, Senator Cruz just went through it a couple days ago. And so then she starts it up, this lady, Jim Jordan, evil, shame. She puts her hands up. It was, Polly handled it great. She turned around and said, please stop. And then the lady says, I can't believe you're married to this man. And I told Polly later, you should have said, I can't believe it, I could have done a lot better. Polly handled it great. I was really looking for the lady in the red coat, man. Let me get to where we're going. We finally got in. But it's like, we would never think of doing that to anyone. But that's how extreme the left is right now. And let me tell you something. The president's record over the last 20 months has been phenomenal. I don't know if you've all had a chance to meet the president. I say this every single speech. I wish every American could meet the guy. You cannot help but like him. And in 20 months, under the leadership of this man, think about this, regulations reduced, taxes cut, economy growing at 4.2%, lowest unemployment in 20 years, Gorsuch on the court, Kavanaugh going to the court. We're out of that crazy Iran deal. The embassy is now in Jerusalem, and the hostages have been returned from North Korea. It is an amazing record. It is truly a phenomenal record, and the left doesn't like that. They do not like it, and it is going to be, I think the way you frame this election up is you show where they want to take the country, that radical vision they have. They want to impeach our president. They want to raise your taxes. They want to socialize medicine even more, and they do want to abolish ICE and have an open border, right? And where we want to take the country under the president's leadership and more things we have to get done. That's how you frame it up over the next 39 days, whatever we're down to now. And then let's go let the American people choose between those. And I think most Americans are going to choose the right side there. Let me just finish with this. Well, let me say one other thing. When I say liberty's under attack, it is not just from the left, it's also from folks currently in the government. There have been things that have happened because of the nature of my committee assignments. I'm on the Judiciary Committee, the Oversight Committee, and when it was in existence, I was on the Benghazi Committee. We're always in the middle of these crazy scandals that encroach on your liberty. And it started with the IRS. I mean, think about it. Yeah. The IRS, in a systematic way, and for a sustained period of time, went after people just like you. Yes. And why did they go after you? Because they didn't like your political beliefs. They attacked your First Amendment free speech rights. You think about the founders and when they put together the First Amendment, right to practice your faith the way you want, right to assemble, freedom of the press, freedom to petition your government, and freedom to do what else? Do what I'm doing right now, right? Freedom to speak. And when they were talking about speech, they were in many ways focused on what kind of speech? Political speech, right? That's the whole point. And what did the IRS do? They went after people for political speech. Terrible. And they did it. They had an orchestrated plan, putting you on a list, making it difficult to get your C3 status and C4 tax exempt status. So then it goes from there to what we saw with what the State Department did when 4 Americans gave their life on 9/11/2012. Tyrone Woods, Glenn Doherty, Sean Smith, and Chris Stevens, trying to cover that up. I mean, on and on it goes. But today, I never thought I'd see anything as bad as the IRS until this FBI thing come along. And I don't know how close you followed this, but I'll just say this. When have you ever seen this happen at a federal agency? James Comey, director of the FBI, former director, fired. Andy McCabe, deputy director, lied 3 times under oath, faces a criminal referral, fired. Jim Baker, chief counsel at the FBI, first demoted, then left the FBI. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, demoted, left the FBI. Peter Strzok, deputy head of counterintelligence at the FBI, demoted, then fired. Now, these weren't just any people at the FBI. These were the top people. Not only the top people who ran the Clinton investigation and launched and ran the Russian investigation into President Trump. I've never seen anything like that. And I'm not even talking about Sally Yates and Bruce Orr. Sally Yates has been fired at the Justice Department. Bruce Orr has been demoted twice. This is scary. The idea that you can have one One party take a opposition research document, dress it all up, make it look like legitimate intelligence, take it to a secret court to get a warrant to spy on the other party's campaign. That is never supposed to happen in this country, and it did. So this is why it is so important that you all continue your efforts fighting for the values and principles, as I said, that make us special. Let me finish with just two quick thoughts. My favorite statement is one that's not actually, even though my background is wrestling, Isaac, it's actually made by a baseball player. Guy pitched for the Dodgers, Earl Hershiser. And some of you may remember, took him to a World Series championship back in the late 80s. Called him the Bulldog. He's tough. Didn't have the fastest fastball, but he just was a tough pitcher, knew how to pitch. Read his book, and early in his book, he says this: great things can happen to ordinary people who work hard and never give up. Great things can happen to ordinary people who work hard and never give up. My favorite word in the statement. My favorite word in the statement is the word ordinary. Stop and think about it. We're all just regular, ordinary people. Nobody's any better than anybody else. We're all in need of God's grace. But in this country, ordinary people don't have to do ordinary things. They can do extraordinary things if they're willing to work hard and never quit. And that is a concept that was there at 1776 all the way to present day. And I would argue there are folks in this country who want to make that so that it's not the norm any longer. They want to make it difficult for regular, ordinary people to chase down their goals and dreams for themselves and their family. They want to make it more difficult. That's what the left really, in the end, would result in if their policies get put in place. That's what we got to preserve. And the way to preserve it is to do what Paul told Timothy. 2 Timothy 4:7, my favorite scripture verse, because it contains words of action. Paul's the old guy giving advice to the young guy, and he says what? Fight the good fight, finish the course, keep the faith. And notice the words he used: fight, finish, keep. Not sissy words, not mamby-pamby words, American words, right? I feel like that verse, I know this, we probably got some pastors in here and they totally disagree with me, but I feel like that verse was written for America, right? We're a country of action. We're people of action. Fight, finish, keep. That is our charge, and you've all been doing that. Keep doing it, and if you do, we'll continue to be the greatest nation ever. God bless you all.
He will take a couple questions, even though he's left the podium, if there's something you want to ask. There was a wonderful presentation. You've inspired us and encouraged us, and we're most appreciative. To close our evening, we have our favorite entertainer, Chris Ullman, who is, where is he? Saw wife, there he is. Yes. An international wrestling. Chris, well, see, ordinary people can do extraordinary things. You can do that. He's an international whistling champion. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you. It's funny you say that because throughout the years, sometimes people say, well, you know, what do you do? And I say, well, I'm a champion whistler. And they say, wrestler? And I say, no, whistler. So, but if you want to do a duet, you know, with a great wrestler and the whistler, that would be a lot of fun. All right. So I'm going to whistle Battle Hymn of the Republic, which seems really appropriate after the Congressman's speech. And I had the first time I ever whistled this song was in the Oval Office for George W. Bush, which was a really a great honor. And I'm especially honored to perform it for y'all. There we go.